So thank you very much also for the organizers and my colleagues for the opportunity to have this lecture here. As you can see, it's something different from the usual lectures I'm doing here at the observatory at our department. So I choose a lecture about the sky over Middle Earth or astronomy in the work of Professor Tolkien. I will explain briefly how I managed to get to this topic. Actually, this is already the third time I have this lecture. First time in English, but I had this lecture already during this week. Last week I had this lecture already 2 times. First time it was for the public or for the general audience during, we can say, the Slovak version of Comic-Con, and on Wednesday I had this lecture also for the high school students, and now I will have this lecture for the professional astronomers. So it will be really interesting how also you will react to this lecture. So what will be the content of my presentation? So just briefly, if somebody doesn't know me, so a little presentation of myself. Afterwards I would like to talk about the work of J.R.R. Tolkien and the link of Tolkien's work with astronomy. And I will show some examples of astronomy related notes especially in the books of the Lord of the Rings. And I will try to briefly explain this phenomena. I think here it's not necessary to explain this phenomena, but I think it's really interesting to show this phenomena also to us, because as we will see, there is much astronomy included in the work of Professor Tolkien. So usually, as I have this lecture for the high school students, I'm also explaining the astronomy itself, as you can see it there. But I think it's not necessary here, so we can just. I will mainly focus on the quotes and the references in the books. So here is just the brief presentation of myself, so you can see, as you already potentially noticed, I'm mainly involved as I research. My topic is astroparticle physics and cosmic rays and high energy gamma rays. And now I'll briefly skip to the sky over the Middle Earth of astronomy in the work of J.R.R. Tolkien. So it would be nice firstly to introduce a little bit Professor Tolkien. So he was born in South Africa, but practically all his life is spent in England and the UK. He was an English writer, poet, philologist and professor, but as we will see, he was also an amateur astronomer and he was very familiar with astronomy. I think now we can try also to make a little poll. Who already heard something about Lord of the Rings? Right, the majority. So now who actually saw the movies? All right, and who read the books? All right, so this is quite interesting because I have asked this question also to the students, the high school students, and there were only 2 students who read the books. So that was a little bit surprising during my lecture. So as we know, the work of Professor Tolkien is quite huge. It includes Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales. But here I would like to focus mainly on the Lord of the Rings and the 3 books, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. Practically almost all of the work of Professor Tolkien is linked with the Middle Earth. It's like an imaginary world he created, which is called Arda, but it should represent something like an imaginary history of the Earth, something about 6,000 years ago. And what's interesting about this world, not potentially only Middle Earth, but also in the works of, for example, J.R. Martin, who created Game of Thrones, or also, for example, Witcher, which are the major fantasy stories. So it's the complexity of these worlds, because it contains its geography, history, mythology, but also, as we will see, also astronomy. So the behavior of the celestial object is also included in these stories, and did something which creates this complexity, and it's kind of attractive for the students and also for the general audience. So first thing, spoiler alert. So if somebody wants to just read the books and don't know about the story before I am telling him, so sorry for it, but it's necessary to talk about it. So as I saw that practically almost everybody of us, but the majority of us is familiar with the movies of Peter Jackson, but astronomy itself is not so presented in the movies of Peter Jackson, and we will focus mainly on the books. How I get here, because I am also a fan of the work of Professor Tolkien, but how I get to see the astronomy in the books of Professor Tolkien is that I also saw the movies, and afterwards I said myself, oh, all right, I'm a big fan, so I should read the books. As I was reading the books, so I saw that there are many references linked with the astronomy, and as we will see, so the story itself, which takes place in the Middle Earth, so the heroes, as they are looking on the skies, they can see the same sky as we are looking at. The behavior of the celestial objects, the movement of the objects is the same as we are looking at. They have different names, but practically it's the same. So here we can derive from it that Professor Tolkien was not only a writer and everything we can say about him, he was also an amateur astronomer, and he was familiar with the physics and modern physics. And it will be also interesting to use these books, as we will see, the astronomy is basically good. It's correct. So it will be interesting also to use the thing about the Lord of the Rings or the stories about Middle Earth as an educational tool. For example, to use them to show students about the astronomical phenomena, astronomical objects, and to teach them about it. And I'm not the first one who came up with this idea, but there are already also professional astronomers, for example, Professor Kristin Larsen, who is a professor of astronomy and physics at Central Connecticut State University, and she also creates like a public lectures, but also papers about the astronomy in Tolkien's work. And also there are currently astronomers who are, for example, calculating the lunar phases at some special events which are taking place in Lord of the Rings. And what is included in the work of Professor Tolkien in the Lord of the Rings? As I said, he created his own world. So basically, it's cosmology and cosmogony. He created its own space, its own universe, its own world, which is called Arda. So it's cosmology and cosmogony, and this is included in the book Silmarillion. But I will focus here mainly on the Lord of the Rings, and the biggest book is the most pages is the Fellowship of the Ring book, and the astronomy, the biggest part of the astronomy related references is included in the Fellowship of the Ring, but also in the other two books, but mainly in the Fellowship of the Ring. And what is included in this book? So we can see the lunar phases. There is movement of the sun, stellar catalogs, constellation, and asterisms. As we will see, so he was familiar with the constellation and with which constellation are visible which part of the year. Spherical shape of the world. It's pity that we have to explain to people that currently the world is not flat, but it's spherical. But already in Tolkien work is included that the world is spherical. Scintillation of the stars. He created his own calendars. That's the astronomy. Basically, the calendars are based on the observation of astronomical objects. Spectroscopy, planets, mainly he's talking a lot about Venus, or for example also meteorites. So here we go. How I'll talk about this, I will try to be as brief as I can. So we can do it in two ways. Either I will go chronologically, book by book, chapter by chapter, and focus on the references, or I can go about different topics, and I will try to use this second option, that I will take one topic and try to find the references in the books. Here we are skipping directly to the book of the Return of the King, of the third book, in the chapter 5, the Ride of Rohirrim. So to those who saw the movies, so there is a part when the Rohirrims, which are the riders on the horses, are coming to protect the city of Minas Tirith from the army of the orcs, and they gather on the hill. They are screaming on the orcs, all right, we are going to defeat you, and we will smash you with our horses. But from the strategical point of view, it's not so correct, we can say, because they are waiting on the hill screaming to the orcs, so the orc army actually can gather and regroup for the defense. But in the books it's described a little bit differently. In the books it's described in the way that the army of the Rohirrims is like trying to go through the hills on the other side of the city and surprise the army of the orcs from the back. And how this army is going to get through these hills, so there is like the bunch or the group of the people who are the original inhabitants of the Middle Earth, which are called wild men, and these wild men bring their leader, who is called Ganburi in the books. This leader is brought in front of the King Theoden, which is the king of the Rohirrims, and he's trying to tell the King Theoden that, all right, you have too many soldiers. There is quite a lot much more orcs than you have in your army. And Theoden asked him, how do you know this? And Ganburi answering that with this interesting part, and basically he is telling him, I count many things: stars in the skies, leaves on the trees, men in the dark. You have a score of scores, counted 10 times and 5. Now we have to calculate a little bit. So in English, scores represent basically 20. So you have score of scores. You have 20 times 20, 10 times and 5. So it's 6,000 spears, we can say. So the army of Rohirrims is composed of 6,000 spears, of 6,000 Rohirrims. And he's telling him, I count many things, stars in the skies. So now I think that some of the astronomers could see some reference in this, because when we are asking to the students at high schools and on the public lectures how many stars you can see on the sky, there is a nice warm evening, summer evening in the ancient Greece, and we are asking you how many stars you can count on the sky with the naked eye. So usually when I'm asking this question to the students, I can hear the answers like 1 million, billion, infinity, or for example. But also there are some students who answer me in a more like a logical view that, all right, it should be something about thousands. And here is a nice photo to pinpoint how many stars we can count in the skies from Tomáš Slovinský, who is a Slovak astrophotographer, who take this picture at the Roque de los Muchachos Observatory at Canary Islands. And here I will skip a little bit the slides, because basically I'm explaining how we are, the apparent magnitude, we everybody know here how the scale of the apparent magnitude is composed. But what I'm trying to say also to the students is that there is, like we know currently, we have the stellar catalogs, and the apparent magnitude, using the apparent magnitude, we are capable to set the limits of the visibility of the stars. And here we have a really nice poster, which is currently was created by the European Space Agency. We have like a transition from the catalogs from Hipparchus up to the modern catalogs, which are created by Gaia satellite. And going back to the quote or the reference from Lord of the Rings, so Ganburi is telling to Theoden that you have around 60 spears or 60 soldiers. And basically what we are trying to teach the students about how many stars you can see on the skies is the same number. Practically we are telling something between 5, 6 or up to 8,000 sometimes. So here you can see that actually practically we can derive from it that every single Rohirrim represents one star on the skies, almost. We can see it in the perfect conditions. All right, in the perfect conditions, yes, we have to say that that's in the perfect conditions if we have not so big light pollution. But back in the age of in the epoch of Professor Tolkien, it was not so the light pollution was not so frequent, but oh yeah, also. But in the perfect conditions, we have like 1,000 of stars you can see. So this is an interesting topic. So we can go further. This is really interesting part. This is the part when I figure out that actually there is included astronomy in the work of Professor Tolkien. This, as I read, so it was really like very big surprise for me, because this is a part when hobbits are leaving Shire, and they are trying to hide from Nazguls. In the books, they are protected when they are trying to hide from Nazguls, which are the bad riders on the horses, which are trying to catch them and catch the One Ring and give it to Sauron, the Dark Lord. But they are in this part protected by the group of elves, which protects them during one night, and as they are falling asleep during the night. So there is the description about what the hobbits can see on the skies. So we can see here the few lines. A star came out above the trees in the darkening east before them. They were a breeze and step after time. They thicker and brighter. So yeah, this is one another reference I forgot about. So this is how we can see the stars are getting brighter and brighter after the sunset. But this is the reference I was talking about. Away high in the east swung Remirat, the netted star, and slowly about the mist red Borgil rose, glowing like a javel of fire. They by some shift of airs all the mist was drawn away like a wheel, and there lay up, as he climbed over the rim of the world, the swordsman of the sky, Medelvagor, with his shining belt. Here we have to say that in which part of the year we are taking place, because the hobbits are leaving Shire in the late September, and they are arriving to Bree, which is the other village they will come in 5th October. So we are on the transition between September and October, and here the hobbits are looking in the east, and we can see the winter sky practically here. So we can see the description of Orion and some other objects, celestial objects. So here I'm explaining a little bit about the constellations to the students, how many constellations we are capable to see on the sky. We have, which is currently, we can say, we have on the sky by International Astronomical Union, and this is how the actual sky, this division of the sky in different constellations looks like currently. So we have 88 constellations. But going back to the reference itself, so as I said, we are going from the September to the October, and looking on the east, very east, we can see this part of the sky. So this is the image from Stellarium software, which is practically, I think everybody here knows about it. So I put it here on for the 1st October, almost at midnight, but this is the part of the sky we can see on the east. And if we divide the reference from Tolkien in different parts, so he's talking about the Remirat, the netted star. So I think that basically we can see that the netted star should be Pleiades or Seven Sisters, open clusters in Taurus constellation. Afterwards, he's talking about the red Borgil rose. So it should be some red star, which rose up right after the netted star. So here, in this sense, most probably he's talking about Aldebaran, the brightest star in constellation Taurus. And afterwards, I think this is most obvious, he's talking about the swordsman of the sky, Medelvagor with his shining belt. So it should be Orion with his belt. Going a little bit farther, so after a few chapters later, in the chapter Strider, so the hobbits are arriving in the Bree, which is the village where they are supposed to meet Gandalf, but he's not there. They are meeting with Aragorn, who is going to be the next king, and Aragorn is trying to protect the hobbits from Nazguls, and he managed to change the room for the hobbits in order for the Nazguls to think that they are in a different room. And as they are arriving in this room, so Tolkien is telling us that this room has windows looking north and close to the ground, and Frodo is looking from the window, and he's telling us the sickle was swinging bright above the shoulders of the Bree Hill. And we have here also the star from Tolkien, the hobbit's name for the plow or great bear. So the sickle is the name, the hobbit name for the plow or great bear. So looking on the north, this is basically what Frodo should see, the Great Bear. So the Great Bear should be on the north. So also here we can see how the constellations are included in Lord of the Rings. Going to the other topic, so stellar scintillation is included in the books. Here are a few references from the Fellowship of the Ring, also in the Return of the King. We can see how the stars are glinted bright, or there was like a glitter of the stars. In my lectures for students, I'm talking about the scintillation, how that's basically what the glittering of the stars we can see is caused by the Earth's atmosphere, and that's what influenced the astronomical observation and what we are trying to avoid as much as we can. Spherical shape of the Earth. Here we have really nice reference, which is in the Fellowship of the Ring, when hobbits managed to get to Rivendell, which is like the base for the elves, and all of the nations of the Middle Earth are gathering in the Rivendell at the Council of Elrond, and they are telling themselves how they are screwed now because the ring was found and what to do with it now. And in this discussion, Aragorn is starting to talk, and he's explaining who is he, and he will be the future king. But also he's explaining that I have crossed many mountains and many rivers and trodden many plains, even into the far countries of Rhun and Harad, where the stars are strange. So the countries of Rhun and Harad, for those who are not familiar with the geography of the Middle Earth, so are on the south of the continents. So basically, if the Aragorn was traveling to the south, so he should see different stars. So the stars should be strange for him. So this is something which should be visible only on the spherical Earth or on the spherical world. Here we have a nice photo from Harrison Schmitt from Apollo 17 mission, and that's pity that we have to explain to people that the Earth is not looking like this, but it's looking like this. And how it's possible to see that? So that's one way how to see that, moving around the globe, and we will see that we are going to see different part of the skies. So when we are in Bratislava and we are moving, for example, more to the north, to Prague, so it's not so visible. But when we are moving, for example, in Stockholm, so the Polaris will be higher, or on the far north of the Sweden, the Polaris will be even higher, or when we arrive to the North Pole, so the Polaris, as we know, will be above our heads.
If you travel very far on the flat Earth, you can have some
All right, so it's yes, but in this sense, we should see also the parallax of the stars. If we are moving, so they should be much closer, and this is not what we are observing. All right, now moving more to the south. So we are going to the holidays in Croatia, for example, in Dubrovnik. So it's quite much it's much southern as we are, for example. So the Polaris should be not so much lower, but actually it's already lower. But if we travel to the equator, so the Polaris will be on the horizon, and on the other side, the South Pole will start to appear. And if we travel in the Cape Town, so the stars will be really strange for us. All right, lunar phases. This is really interesting because everything which takes place in the story of the Middle, in the Lord of the Rings, is actually linked with the lunar phases, because everything what's happening there, it's made in lunar cycles, and we can see it in many places. But there is one interesting part which I think is the best where we can see it. Is the part in the Fellowship of the Ring, when the Fellowship of the Ring is traveling on the Great River Anduin, when they are leaving another base of elves, Lorien, and one of the hobbits is starting to calculate, and he's telling the moon was waning as we lay on the flat up in the tree, a week from the full, I reckon, and we have been a week on the way last night when pops up a new moon as thin and nailing pairing. Well, I can remember 3 nights therefore center, and I seem to remember several more. By old like my old, it was never a whole month. In these few lines, there is like we can see how is the lunar cycle incorporated in the story, because they arrive to Lorien or Lothlorien when they are defended by Lady Galadriel, who is the queen of the elves, just after leaving from Moria, which was the dwarf kingdom where Gandalf put his staff that in front of Balrog that you should not pass. And as he's telling us, all right, the moon was waning as we lay on the flat up in the tree. So they were laying on the flat up in the tree when they arrived in Lorien, and so the moon was approximately a week from the moon. So it was 1 week after the full moon, and now as they are traveling on Anduin on this river, so he's telling them we are week traveling on the river, but now pops up the new moon. But he can the Samwise can remember at least 3 nights spending in the Lorien. So he's telling us either we have not spent any time in Lorien, or we have spent the whole month, whole lunar cycle. And this is interesting because afterwards Aragorn also explains him that time is moving a little bit differently in the countries of elves. But here is one error which Tolkien made, because as we could see from the calculation of Sam, he was calculating for the lunar cycle to be around 28 days. But we know, astronomers here, that the lunar phases are quite longer, because we know the sidereal period and the synodic period, and the sidereal period is the period of the movement of the moon in order to be 3 whole cycle around the Earth. But actually the period for the phases, lunar phases, is the synodic period, and it's something more than 29 days. So this is one error a little bit which was in the Lord of the Rings, because most probably Tolkien was using the sidereal period for the moon, but it should be the synodic period of the moon. All right, now going to the meteorites. Meteorites are included in the Lord of the Rings. How it's possible? So in the Return of the King, the passing of the Great Company, so there is Aragorn, dwarf Gimli, and elf Legolas, and they are taking another way up to the Middle-earth. They are leaving the army of Rohirrims, and they are trying to gather the army of death, the army of ghosts, in order to help them to defeat the orcs in front of the Middle-earth, or in front of the Minas Tirith. And as they are passing through the villages, these ghosts they are gathering these ghosts, and they are like passing in near the hill, and on this hill there is some stone, and here is the description of that stone. For upon top stood a black stone, round as a great globe, the head of a man, though its half was buried in the ground. Unearthly it looked, as though it had fallen from the sky, as some believed. So we can see that it should be basically black stone, unearthly looking. It should be something we were looking at a few weeks ago. He has also a name for it. It should be the name was, I think, Stone Erech, which should be the gathering place for this army. So they were looking for something like this. This is the Košice meteorite from the 2010, and how they so this was a little bit bigger. As we could see, this was a little bit bigger meteorite, and it was not necessary for them to looking for it like this. Members of our department are on this picture. Some of them are also in this room, and in the end of June there was an event of the observation of the really bright meteor of the bolide, and there was a potentially fall of the meteorites. We currently know that there was also one part which was found, and near the village of Puste Ulani, and also we have another photo here, and so yeah, this stone was a little bit larger. It was not necessary for them to look it like this, like with it. And this was all the crew who was looking for it for the first time. All right, and now to the last part. Also, spectroscopy is included in the Lord of the Rings. So we can see also the Tolkien was also familiar with modern physics, and we have here one reference in the Fellowship of the Ring when it's almost in the Council of the Elrond. Again, when everybody explained how we are screwed, that also Gandalf explained where he was during this time, that he was imprisoned by Saruman, the highest wizard, in the Tower of Orthanc, and he explained him that now I'm not the White Wizard, but I am the wizard or Saruman of many colors. And he explained, and Gandalf is quite surprised, and Saruman explained, white cloud made me die. The white page can be overwritten, and the white light can be broken. So here we can actually see how the light can be decomposed in different colors, and that's spectroscopy. All right, here are the sources, and I'm ending with the quote from the Fellowship of the Ring. Thank you very much for your attention.